It's not all or nothing anymore, and I think that's a huge change.
And do you know what happened to stop you from falling into this all or nothing? I mean, I know you've mentioned about the age, but like, was there something that happened? Like, what is going on there? Because it's just so key for so many people to be able to break this cycle of the all or nothing. And that's why I'm really interested in it.
Yeah. Well, I've not really thought too deeply about this.
Don't be fooled by how fit today's guest looks. Don is 6'4", 180 pounds, lean and strong. But what makes his story special isn't what you see now. It's about the journey that he has been on. He's a 41-year-old father of 3 who used to weigh 250 pounds. He's yo-yo dieted for over a decade, and he even got liposuction once because he thought that it would help him feel enough. But what really changed his life was when he broke the all or nothing mindset that held him back. Now, in this conversation, Don shares exactly how he did that. We explore what he needs to do next, with a particular focus on troubleshooting his training so that he doesn't get caught in cycles of injury as he has done in the past. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you. You've said that you want to be Captain America fit. What does that mean to you?
So I feel like when I walk around with my friends or family or people outside of the gym, like people might notice, hey, he goes to the gym, and that's great. When I go to the gym, I don't feel I stand out. I want to be the guy that's noticed even in the gym. And a lot of it is also just health, longevity. You build up those reserves, and then when you're older, you can enjoy life more. But I feel like I really need to charge that battery up. And if I could get to the point where I feel I look like Captain America, then I must be exceptionally fit. And that's going to set me up well for my later years.
Okay, so there's this idea of looking like Captain America. What does that mean in terms of pounds of muscle to you or extra leanness to you at this point? I'm guessing that you're fairly lean right now. Looking at your face, your neck, you're quite lean, is that right? And you're almost ready to finish and go into a bulk. I know that you're talking about finishing off your cut right now, and we will get into that.
Yeah, so I'm 6'4", sitting around 180 right now. When I did my first cut, I stopped at 175 and then turned around and went into a bulk. I do feel I've put on some muscle, so I might be at about the same leanness that I was before my first bulk, but 5 pounds heavier, which seems like progress, but I'm still not at a place where I'm seeing my abs really. I've got excess skin. I'm 41 and there's like a pouch on my belly. I would like to get rid of that, and I'm just not sure if that's something that's possible without surgery or if I just keep working at it. But it's not about getting to absolute chiseled right now. I feel like as long as I can keep going through the cycle of bulking and cutting and feel that I'm making progress each time, then I know I'll eventually get there.
So here's the interesting thing about Don. You might be looking at him if you're on YouTube and thinking, oh yeah, this guy looks absolutely fit. Why is he even on the podcast? And it's all relative. Everybody wants to level up from where they're at. And that's an important point. Don, you want to level up from where you're at. But if we go back, I don't know, 10 years, something like that, or 20 years certainly, you were not always this guy. You were a guy who had always struggled with his weight. You've had to fight to get into the position that you're in. Could you tell us a little bit about your history with dieting, with weight gain and loss, and the challenges that you've had?
Yeah, so I was pretty overweight as a kid. I would say in the 7th grade, I already weighed like 220, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I was pretty obese as a kid. I did lean out some in high school, played some sports, football and such. And that's when I had my first, I don't think of it as a cut, but that's when I first really started trying to get fit. And I dropped all the way down from 235 at that time to 185. And
wow,
I felt great. I thought I was going to be in charge of my life. And then I hurt myself because I kept trying to add on more and more weights, and that eventually caught up to me. So then get into college, and I put on, they say you can put on like the freshman 15 pounds because you're just free. I put on like the freshman 35 or something like that. And then that diet roller coaster just stayed with me for about a decade and a half. So up and down, anywhere from 250 was the most I ever weighed, and that was not all muscle. Then, a couple of times I'd get down to about 190, and that seemed to be the lowest I could cut down. I tried to do it through running. I've run a marathon and a few half marathons. And I lost a lot of weight, but then I'd look at myself and be like, this isn't exactly how I want to look, though. And then I ran across your site about 2.5 years ago, and it all made sense to me, and I started using that, and it's been great. I feel like the struggles I'm having now aren't because I don't understand what you're going for and that it's bogus information. It's more of I'm hitting that point where I have to put a lot of mental energy in. Like you have to, if you're, so I'm in the intermediate program right now. That's what I'm following from your site, and I've tuned a couple of things. And considering, do I need to go up to the advanced? Because I'm starting to run into these issues where I can't progress at the rates that I had been, getting some injuries when I try to, but I don't feel I'm ready to make the jump because I'm not putting the rigor into it. I'm not measuring my body regularly. I'm not able to think that much about it because my job is very demanding. That's where all my mental energy goes these days.
Right. And it's got especially demanding recently. There's been a change there, right?
Yeah. So I got promoted actually a few weeks ago. And thank you. Very excited for the change. It's a pretty great career move for me, but it's added quite a bit of stress. And this promotion was about 3 weeks ago. And in that time, I have stopped weighing myself daily. I have fallen off of my diet. I injured my back and had to take a week off. I took a diet break on that week because I figured what better time than when I'm not going to be working my muscles anyways to make sure I'm not losing them.
Yep.
And now I'm having a hard time getting back on my macros now that the diet break's over.
Yeah, okay. And also you've got all of this background of stress and different work environment, and it's probably affecting your sleep. And let's absolutely come back to this. I want to put a pin in this. So we're going to look at training, expectations there, and troubleshooting. The diet phase that you're in, whether you're cutting, maintenance, or bulking, is going to affect what we can expect from our training and the adjustments that we make. When we're under a lot of stress, that is going to also affect what we do, or rather consider doing, and then the things that we should monitor as we're then considering further adjustments after that. And then what we can do once the stressful period is over. Should it just be an immediate return to what we're doing before, or something else? So let's put a pin in that. I want to come back to that. And I want to go back to this history of yo-yo dieting. Gained, lost. Why did you gain and lose, and why are things different now?
The losing all happened really fast. Like it was my main focus in life. I didn't have anything else to think about. It was all that mattered to me, and I had to do it fast. So I would start the year off like New Year's resolution. I'm going to be a lean machine by summertime. And I could actually, make a ton of progress there, but it wasn't good enough. And then I'd push myself harder because I want the progress to go faster. I wasn't aware of things like training age and, how advanced of a trainer I am. So I kept trying to do that linear progression. And then I would hurt myself. And at that point, it's just very demoralizing. You fall off. All it takes is a few days of just not caring about what you eat, not trying to lift, and you can lose all the habits. Or at least that's how I used to think about it.
I see.
And so that same cycle, yeah.
So it became this all or nothing for you. When you got injured, You then stop caring about the diet. You've then stopped caring about the diet and you're injured. So then you're like, what's the point? Is that what's going through your head at the time, or?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it starts maybe more, it'll be okay. Like, I'm eating more now, but the scale hasn't suddenly jumped back up. So maybe my body can handle it better. Maybe my metabolism is, a rock star now, and I can get away with things that I couldn't before. But then it starts to slide, and by then you've stopped weighing yourself and paying attention. And then you notice a couple months later that you actually look different in the mirror. Yeah.
And what is different for you now? Why is that pattern no longer happening?
Well, I think understanding the way that my body works a little bit better. Maybe it's just a maturity thing. So I'm in my 40s now, and I've had several setbacks in various ways in life, and then find ways to bounce back from them. And so it's not so much about trying to get the immediate progress. And if you feel like you regress a little bit, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to double down to fix the issue. Instead, you just get back onto your habits. So it's not all or nothing anymore. And I think that's a huge change.
And do you know what happened to stop you from falling into this all or nothing?
Yeah. Well, I've not really thought too deeply about this, but big life events that happened. So I not at all focused on my health, but more on my mental health, I suppose. And during that time, I actually got liposuction. So I had been working out in my living room with a little weight set and had, dropped a fair amount of weight, but felt like it wasn't enough and I wasn't enough with that. So got the liposuction, didn't get the results I wanted out of it. And so maybe that has something to do with it. I kept working out and was cycling regularly at the time. And then I hit a patch of gravel one day and flipped over my bike and broke my collarbone. So I've got a metal plate right here. And that definitely took me away from working out for quite a while. And after that, I suppose I just felt thankful that I had the ability to work out once I was recovered. So I went for a while without getting surgery. They said, 99% of people your age, it's going to just mend on its own. And I was in that 1% where it didn't. And so I had to get the surgery and all that. And then I was just thankful that I could. And so maybe there was a mental shift there where it became less about, having to be perfect and more about just wanting to do my best and being thankful for what I have and wanting to make the most of it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been a super tough situation. Okay, so you come through, you're then able to now train again. Was this around the time that you found the website? You said you were working out with just some small dumbbells before that. But at what point did you actually start lifting? Was that soon after that, once you're recovered, your shoulders recovered, or did you carry on running for a while?
I carried on cycling for a little while. And then I did switch over to lifting because I felt like I could lose the weight, but then I didn't, I didn't have the muscle. I was lifting with dumbbells in my garage and felt like I was making some pretty good progress for a while. And I don't remember exactly how I ran across your website, to be honest, but I was looking around trying to understand, like, why do people stagnate? Because I was stagnating. I was still trying for linear progression. I was annoyed that I was having to take heavier and heavier dumbbells and get them into position to even do, say, a bench press. Right. And I didn't want to go to the gym. I really wanted to just do it at home and kind of have it be a private thing. And so I was looking around for advice, like, what am I missing here? And I think that's when I ran across your site.
Right, I see. And once you did start the strength training, what physical changes did you see then at that point?
Well, I I think visually, what I noticed first was kind of my mid-torso area started to lean out more than it had, and I had more definition in that area. I've always kind of had big shoulders, but I noticed more definition in my shoulders too. And then, of course, I was able to lose weight, but without being all consumed by it. Because again, it was all or nothing all the times before. And I think your site really explaining that I think you have a line in there that says we are our habits, not our occasions.
Yeah, that's right. We're the product of our habits, not the occasions.
Yeah, and that really stuck with me. And so I noticed the physical changes, but I was actually more excited by the mental change that I got from looking at your site.
Okay, and that is what then has kept you here since, kept training, kept on pushing on. And so now you've achieved weight stability and health stability. You're no longer this guy who's yo-yoing. You're no longer this guy who is unable to handle moments where things are really tough. And so you just get into the spiral of ballooning, unfortunately, back up because you haven't been able to do everything possible. But you do have a big challenge that's coming up, right? And that's now this new promotion that you've got. And you're wondering what's possible from here and what you're going to do. So the one thing that you're not going to do is fall back into those all or nothing habits, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're concerned that, so the one concern is about the skin. Another concern is about injuries and making sure that you don't get injured. Another concern is very tactical on what you can expect from your training and when to make increases to the intensity or the training volume or reductions in those things, right? So let's talk about the skin. You have been 250, you've been down to 180, so that's a 70-pound change. This is on a 6'4" frame, but that's still a lot of weight. And you've been up and down many times over the years. Now, and then there's also the liposuction. How much did you, I haven't had any client do this before, so I don't have any experience with this, but it's still worth asking, how much did you have taken out?
Oh, I don't remember exactly, to be honest. So I believe my weight at the time was about 190. And I think there were only a couple of pounds taken out, and it was just in my midsection area. It wasn't. Yeah. So
this is like that lower pouch, right?
Yeah.
That you had. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The rest of my body, I feel like I have pretty good definition on. Like I could still get more chiseled, but I feel pretty good about it. But that pouch and the love handles area is the last to go for me. And yeah.
Yeah, so that front, the lower part of the abs and those love handles, they are the last to go for everyone. But they may have been a bit more pronounced for you because of the loose skin or loose-ish skin. And that's because of the repeated losses and gains over the years. And so skin will lose its elasticity over time. And skin does also lose elasticity over age. Skin loses its elasticity as we gain and lose weight. It also loses its elasticity as we age. And so when you put those two things together, it's natural for you to have a little loose skin. Are you going to be able to completely get rid of that? Possibly not. The only way that you're going to tell is when you keep your weight stable for a while. And if you have a way of measuring whether this is coming tight or not over time. So wait for a few months once you're at a stable weight. You know, when you're there and you're happy, of course, you don't have to put everything on hold for that. And if then it doesn't come tight over time, then you can make a decision on whether you wish to do something else like surgery, if that was a path that you wish to go down. Not that I'm suggesting this to anyone, No, that's your answer, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, so I guess the main thing here is to know that what you're experiencing isn't uncommon. It's not unnatural. There's nothing wrong that you did or about you. It's just kind of the result of losing a third of your body weight. Almost a third of your body weight, right? And then repeatedly losing about 20-ish% of your body weight over time. So, that's one thing. There were 3 points that I had there. One was the skin, and the third one was about training tactical changes. Do you remember the second one that I said? Not getting injured.
Oh, yes.
Was that it? Not getting injured. Okay, so part of this comes down to expectations from training. Part of this comes down to maturity in listening to our bodies. So very often we can write down our training program, or you can put it in an app, as I know that you do. And we see that last week we lifted X, and therefore this week we're going to lift X plus 5 pounds. That's the training plan. That's what we're going to do. And I think many of us, I'm not suggesting this is you right now, but I think many of us have looked at our training plans and been like, well, that's the plan. And we've warmed up and, we're not quite feeling it, right? But we put the load on the bar anyway. And then we do that first set. And what really should have been a set of 6 good reps end up being 6 good reps, a okay-ish 7th rep, and then a fairly shitty 8th rep. And then instead of having the maturity to then remove some load from the bar, we then just go to our 2nd, 3rd, and possibly 4th sets, keeping the weight the same, with the reps gradually getting worse and worse. And the way the reps get worse is it could be that we start adjusting our form. It could be that we start using a shortened range of motion. And then we end up repeating that over the weeks. We're cheating our way to progress there. We don't necessarily realize that that's what we're doing, but we have a plan. We're going to stick to the plan. We will always do the plan. Right? Does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah. So in particular with my squats, I had been progressing and building up the weights, and I got up to, I think, 325, and this is like high back squats. And then I watched myself in the mirror doing it one time, and I realized I'm only doing half squats. And I've probably only been doing half squats for the last couple of months. But then, I knocked the weight back down there. And then something strange happened. I started feeling this weird pain in my back. And it's like my upper back, like around my shoulder area. And I've got long legs. And so I try to follow all the different advice around how to do a squat when you've got long femurs. But something's happened in the past couple of months, and my squat doesn't feel good in my upper back now. So I feel I really didn't focus enough on my form and just kept adding the weight, following that mental plan. And now I'm realizing I'm going to need to step back a ways probably to correct that.
Okay, so that's good that you've realized it, because that's the first important step. Right? Realizing that there is an issue and then having the maturity to decide that you are going to strategically take a step back. Muscle isn't just going to fall off of us just because we lighten loads. No. We can lighten loads and we can do more reps. And as long as we're training roughly equally close to failure, it can be equally as effective. And you may choose to not, for a few weeks, train as equally close to failure, meaning that with a lighter load, you have to have as many reps, or rather higher reps. So you could go from, squatting 250 for 8 reps, whatever it is. And you could then decide, my form is off. I'm going to reduce the load to 200. And you now have a choice. Do I keep my 8 rep sets, or do I do now sets of 15? And the sets of 15, let's say they're equally close to failure, like 1 or 2 reps shy of failure, they're going to be equally as effective. But that may not be a good idea when you're trying to ingrain new, good, better form patterns. So you might just drop the load to 200. Again, these are just examples. but something where it's nice and light and easy. You can just be focused on your form, but not so light where your form goes out of the window because it's not a real weight. And you're then just doing your sets of 8, and you're building from there, and you're focusing on a few specific things. So one's going to be your squat depth. The other is going to be the bar path. So a lot is said about squatting, but if you film yourself from the side, the path of the bar should be right above the middle of the foot, or slightly more towards the heel, because that's where the center of balance is. And then whether we are leaning more far forward or more backward, whether the knees are going more or less over the toes, this is all just a function of our limb lengths relative to our our segment lengths relative to our torso, plus the bar position on the back. It could even be front bar. So it could be front bar squat, it could be high bar back squat, it could be low bar back squat. But if you're just looking at those things, it's all then predetermined how far forward you're going to lean. And if you try to force it any other way, well, that's when things can feel off. So that's one thing I would look for there. Another thing, you mentioned that you're having discomfort in your upper back. This is anecdotal. I'm certainly not an expert in troubleshooting these things. I had an issue where for years I would have pain in my elbow and shoulder and that rear upper back area because I was forcing my arms back in a low bar squat position when I did not have the shoulder flexibility for it. For those on YouTube now, I'm just going to awkwardly demonstrate this. You will see, I'm going back as far as I can, you will see that there is no daylight. I cannot get my arms back far enough to actually fit a bar there unless I force it, and I used to absolutely force my way in, which would then cause pain. Because I told myself that if I did not squat, but I told people that they should squat, then I was a fake. I was a fake coach. Fake people are shitheads, excuse my French, sorry to those in the car, and I don't like those people. And this was just me being stupid. But don't repeat my mistake, and don't do something like that as well. Experiment with different bar positions, and if you do need to move from a lower back squat to a higher bar back squat, or even to a front squat, you can absolutely do that. And if you still can't get along with those, then I know you said that you've made training modifications to the intermediate bodybuilding program. It's absolutely fine to do that. You are absolutely right to do that. This is what we do with clients all the time to help them train around the different mobility limitations or perhaps old injuries that we don't want to re-trigger. You're absolutely right to do that. So this could be Bulgarian split squats. It could be, there's all sorts of things that you can be doing, which I can see that you are doing. But just know that if something isn't working, despite you trying your best with your form, that's okay. There are no exercises that are mandatory. We are not powerlifters. We're not going to be tested on these things.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier was very helpful about if we can get to roughly the same closeness to failure as what we do during the normal training, then, you can do that without expecting any kind of loss. And I feel like I've generally done that because I looked back at my intensity and my volume on my lifts, and they're all over the place. If you zoom out far enough, you can see there is a slight trend upward on most of them. My bench press is just stagnant. I haven't made any progress there, but I'm trying, and I get to that same closeness to failure. And I guess that's where your site and your podcasts and all have been really helpful, because that's an area where I've not had a lot of confidence in. It's like when I have to take these steps back, or when I have to go and diagnose something, I can't put the mental energy that I need to into this. Do I have a quick litmus test or diagnostic that I can at least know that I'm not screwing myself up while I'm trying to figure out what's wrong? So yeah, that was helpful.
Have you read the article that I have on the site It's about training plateaus, and it's actually called How to Break Training Plateaus, Decision Tree and Checklist article.
I'm pretty sure I did, but it was probably a good 6 months ago the last time I looked at that. It's one that's got a flow chart on it.
That's right. Yeah. Right. I want to go back to this right now. I'm going to read it through with you live, and we can see whether there's anything that we're missing right now, because you're worried about a lack of progress. How are we going to troubleshoot this? What should we do? So the first question is, are you plateaued? This could be specific to a lift, or it could be general, about your training in general. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's no, don't change anything, right? That's the answer I got there, right? If it's yes, okay, then the next question is the answer no to any of the following? Are you sleeping 8+ hours? Are you in an energy surplus? Are you eating enough protein? Are you estimating your RPE accurately, i.e. not going too close to failure and not staying too far from failure? And are you training the muscles or lifts at least twice a week with solid technique?
So I think
those things, yeah.
The only no, I think, is the sleep. And that's just the last 3 weeks or so. But I feel like I was plateauing before the sleep patterns.
Okay.
Yeah. So yep. Let's say yes, because I feel like I was plateauing before all the change.
Now, I want to actually say we got here sleeping 8+ hours. I think that's unrealistic for most people. You're a father of 3, right? You're a busy man. Very few of us get to sleep 8+ hours. And frankly, most clients don't. And I'm not saying that I would hate to put out there that people need to sleep 8 hours in order to make any progress. That's absolutely not true. So you're doing what you can with the sleep, but it's possibly affecting things right now. I would say that most clients probably sleep about 7. Is it significantly less than that now?
Right now, it's more like 6.5, 7.
Okay.
I was doing pretty good before the work changes came up, though. I get up at about 5:30 in the morning, and I'm either doing lifting or working. But that means I got to be to bed by 9:30, and I've actually had been sticking to that pretty well until recently.
Okay, well done with that. I'm another 5 a.m. gym guy here as well. Well, up at 5, gym at 6. I just went and came back to have this conversation. Okay, then the other thing that stuck out to me is the energy surplus question. Because in your answers in the application to come on the pod, you're mentioning about still trying to lean out and lose weight at, it's not 0.5% of your body weight per week. You're losing it a little bit slower than that. So for someone your size, instead of trying to lose at 1 pound per week, you're trying to lose about 0.5 pound per week. But that is still an energy deficit. That is still a calorie deficit.
Yeah, that's
Is that something I missed, or is that something that you just didn't think of just then?
No, you're right. Yeah, so that would be my no on your flow chart.
And I would say this is frankly the biggest one. And this is something that people forget about. And that is that past a certain point, in order to be able to grow more muscle at a meaningful, measurable, noticeable way, certainly that we can stay motivated for, we have to be in a calorie surplus. Now, I mean, this just makes sense, right? Even if we're to hold calories steady at maintenance, at a certain point, we're no longer going to be able to lift anymore. We need to grow more muscle, and we're just not going to lean out any further and grow more muscle any further. This is why we start alternating these cut and bulk phases. And so you're in this slow cutting phase. You're already fairly lean. You're towards the tail end of that cut. It's natural that you're struggling. And I think, frankly, that's the issue. I see it all the time. And so I just want you to know that nothing is wrong. If you do need to slightly lighten the loads, then that's normal. If you are able to make progress, take it. Take any progress that you can, but don't force it to the point where you get injured. I think that's maybe unlikely. Not many people do that after they've done it a few times. But also don't force it to the point where you start getting joint aches and pains. Make sure you change up grip positions, feet positions, angles of pressing, pulling, etc., so that you can avoid that. And really just gut through your training, knowing that as long as you're training hard and frequently enough, that you will be holding on to muscle mass with that steady rate of weight loss. Also assuming that protein is, at a reasonable level. Perhaps that's around 170, 180 grams for your height at a minimum. And then once you get lean, and then you come back and you're at maintenance and then into a surplus, you're going to see a massive difference in your training performance. And then this, as your weight starts ticking up, is going to be translated into muscle growth. So that, I think, it's this not knowing the expectation of what should be happening, what is possible, that can be nerve-wracking. And that's very true when we are dieting, because many of us, we have progress throughout our cutting phase. It's only towards the end when we start to really struggle. And then perhaps we regress. We try our best not to have any regression. I think the first time we do this, many of us, we push harder than we should and we get injured. It's the most important thing here is to know that it's normal and to not worry about it.
Yeah, and thinking back, it's silly because I've read it many times. I thought I had internalized it, but there's so many things to keep track of. It's easy to forget when you're in the midst of the cut. That kind of stuff can happen.
All right. So yeah, you're certainly not alone with that. Lastly, I want to talk about this Captain America goal. You said you want to look like Captain America and feel like the most fit person at your age. You already feel pretty fit and that you stand out outside of the gym setting. And I can totally see why. You're in Kansas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that I mention that is, I don't know about your city in particular, but you're very lean and fit looking. Like, you look like an athlete, right? The average person does not look like yourself in most places, right? It's only like if it's, say, I don't know, Boulder in Colorado, where everyone's just extremely fit, or maybe LA, where everyone, well, not everyone, but there's certainly a lot of people that are drugged to fitness there. But you're the outlier outside of the gym. You're now pushing yourself to compare, which I think is natural, inside of the gym. The gym is going to attract the fittest people, but also it's going to attract some people who are secretly not natural as well. You've got to bear in mind there. So I would just say to you, try to be your best self. Try to be the best Don that you can be. Keeping this big picture in mind, you've mentioned about family here and longevity. Keeping that big picture in mind, making sure that you don't get injured, keeping it fun for yourself so that you can continue to make steady gains over time. Maybe it is 5 pounds of muscle that you manage to add on over a year and a half of a slow bulk up and then a cut again. It might be a little bit more than that, but even at that rate, if you do that 3 times over the next 5 years, that's going to make a tremendous difference to your physique and longevity, right? But don't break yourself trying to be bigger than Brad or whoever's like in the corner, grunting away, squatting like 5 plates, right?
Yeah, I never see people like lifting very heavy at the gym, but they certainly look really big. Who was there was some professional bodybuilder back in like the 70s or 80s that I think was known for lifting very low intensity, but I don't remember the name. And I'm kind of wondering, can I do that? That's what I want to do.
So you've just said there low intensity. So there's intensity of effort and there's also intensity of load, like how much of a 1 rep max that is. Let's consider it in terms of intensity of effort. Did you actually mean how close they're training to failure, or did you mean like just simply how light of weights they were lifting?
I meant the load,
Okay.
the amount of weights.
So So can you do that? Yes, absolutely you can. There's research showing that we can have sets of, anywhere from like 5 to 30 reps. That could be now considered this hypertrophy rep range, right? Where as long as we're training close to failure, we're going to be able to achieve the right stimulus for muscle growth. Now, it's true that we can achieve a stimulus for muscle growth outside of that range as well, but there are problems with it. So anything lower than 5 reps, and sure, sometimes we will do that, but anything lower than 5 reps and is way more skewed towards strength, and it's going to beat the body up more than lighter loads, and it can be difficult to accumulate enough training volume with very low rep sets. Now, if we go to the other side of that, and we consider sets of higher than 30, even a set of 30, I want you to consider how a set of 30 squats taken to 2 reps shy of failure is going to feel. Yeah, you're going to see Jesus, right? If you actually really do that, you will see Jesus multiple times a week, right? And that is not going to be a nice feeling. You're not going to be able to realistically carry on training at that closeness to failure. You'll start kidding yourself and psyching yourself out. We know this because we've seen it, almost all of us, with the leg press. When we have a friend who joins us in the gym one day, and, part of us wants to really show them that we're putting in a good intensity of effort. And instead of the same, we use the same load as we were before, but instead of doing just 8 reps, we suddenly managed to get 11 reps. And we're like, funny that. I've actually been training 4 reps shy of failure when I thought I was actually only training 1 rep shy of failure, right? Now that's going to be exacerbated at higher rep sets for the compound movements. So that's one thing. Cardiovascularly, mentally, it's going to be very tough. But also it can be quite painful to do high rep sets as well. So you can achieve it with lighter loads, but there's a practical limit to that. So that's something to be careful of as well. And if you're thinking of this from the perspective of, this may help me avoid injury. If you've got an issue at higher load, lower rep sets, it absolutely may help. You can certainly give that a try. If not, I wouldn't assume it. But it's certainly something that you can try and you can do, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to experiment a little bit there. That is where the concern comes from, is injuring myself. I don't like doing deadlifts and then feeling like my whole body is achy and lit up in a funny way,
Sure. Let's keep with this specific example. If you don't like that feeling, what is it that you're currently doing for your deadlift? Is it 5 reps, 5 sets of 5, or what is it you're doing there?
It's 4 sets of anywhere from 5 to 8. And then I'm trying to do double progression. I forget which progression it's called, but you start at 5 and then add a rep on, and then you go back and start that all over with a slightly higher weight.
Okay. And you find that this is just generally beating you up. Is that the case?
Yeah. I lowered the weights way back down because I said I had, I never gave numbers on deadlifts, but on deadlift, I had gotten up to about 315 or so. And nice. I was doing that, the 8 reps, but even at 5 reps, that was just beating me up, 4 sets of 5.
Okay. Cool. So just one thing to know, there's nothing that says that we have to deadlift. So when you're back in a calorie surplus, right? Because this is a big caveat here. When you're back in a calorie surplus, if you find that the deadlift still beats you up, well, you don't have to do it. There are alternatives. So that's just, another thing to bear in mind here, right? Just think of the muscle groups that it's training. There are other exercises for those muscle groups, right? There are RDLs that we can do. There are single leg versions that we can do. There are lying or seated, like leg curls. There are glute specific exercises that we can do. There's the, what is it you've got written here? There's a back extensions that we can do as well. So there's nothing that says, well, we have to keep with a deadlift if you don't wish to keep with deadlifts. I understand they're cool and fun.
What's kept me doing them was you generally advise to not add a lot of dedicated core work in. And that's because some of these lifts, like the deadlifts and the compound lifts, all are kind of working that secondarily. And that's my concern, is I could go replace the deadlift with something else, Romanian or whatever. And maybe if it's too isolated of a replacement, then I would lose that benefit to the core.
Slightly, yes. To a degree, I should have caveated my language there a little more. I don't want to put out any misrepresentations or myths into the training community. When you think about it, even when, say, we're doing a seated shoulder press with dumbbells, we're still having to really lock and engage our core to be able to, one, get the dumbbells up, two, be able to press and control it back down. If you were to switch to a single leg version of a deadlift, you're still having to engage your core fairly strongly there. It may not be quite as strongly, but I'm not sure there's going to be that much of a difference. However, even though I've said, like, hey, is there a need to do the abs? Perhaps not. If you want to be sure, you've already got the weighted back extensions in here, right? So you could simply add some hanging leg raises and some cable crunches, a couple of sets of each, twice a week. There you go. Starting very light, because these are movements that your body's not used to. So starting very light, lighter than you feel that you can do, because it's not only that your muscles are not used to it, but your spine may not be used to quite bending in that way. So just starting very, very, very light and then building up from there. And then that's just a way of, working around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then there was one thing that I forgot that we would circle back to, I said from the start, and that is during this now time where you are exceptionally stressed. You said for that first week you had a diet break and you weren't able to train anyway, right? So you're on a time crunch. You're not getting quite as much sleep. Are you still able to train as frequently?
Yeah, the schedule I've set, getting up at 5:30 in the morning to hit the gym at 6, and on the weekends, hitting the gym at 7, has been a way to keep myself from interfering with family time, interfering with work time. So that maintains. The only times where I can't do that is if I have to stay up late doing work, to the point where I feel like, if I'm going to bed at midnight, I'm not going to get up at 5:30 to lift.
Yeah, okay. That's absolutely fair. And I wouldn't say try to get up at 5:30 to lift in that case. It's exceptionally common for busy working dads to, wake early, get the gym out first thing. Because really, it's the one time where nothing can bother us. Mm-hmm. We haven't opened the computer yet, and we've got the deluge of email notifications. And at the end of the day, it can be very tough to then get the motivation to hit the gym, especially when you can feel guilty for then that's time that you feel that you should be with the family, right? So that's totally understandable. So what part of this now are you finding to be a struggle?
I think I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm going to bed before midnight, but I'm not getting enough sleep because I am working later in the evenings after the kids are down. On top of that, I know I think one of your articles mentions this about it's one common pool of reserves that you have, regardless if it's mental stress or physical stress or anything else. And I feel that pool kind of drying up sometimes. So I go in to work out and I don't feel as good as I normally would. I don't look forward to it as much as I normally would.
Right, I see. And when that happens, do you still train regardless? Do you still do something?
I do. And sometimes I'll go a little lighter. Maybe I'll remove an exercise or do a couple less sets, but I still go, yeah.
Great. Okay. So I think it's good that you're keeping up with the habits. It's good that you lighten things, and it's good that you consider removing other sets. So this is actually exactly what we do with clients. Many of them, even through difficult times, they like having the training as this sort of anchor in their schedule. And we will consider removing, if time is tough, we'll consider removing the accessory exercises. We'll just keep to those main lifts. So if it's upper body, for example, and we're doing a push-pull, then we'll keep those 4 exercises. So horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull. But instead of doing 4 sets of each or 3 sets of each, we'll do 1 set less. And so the workouts are faster. They are less taxing purposefully. They may even feel considerably easier, but that is just what needs to happen at this transition time, knowing that in a couple of months, you're going to have settled in, things are going to be less hectic, and you'll be able to get back into your more intense training phase. And just being okay with that. Because we can't be 100% at all times always. The circumstances just aren't going to be in our favor for that. So I think one of the keys is allowing ourselves to not be perfect, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I always wonder how or if I'm supposed to adjust my diet when I'm going through these phases or making these kind of changes.
Oh, so that's a good point. So there's should you adjust it from the mental side of things, and should you adjust it from the physiological side of things in terms of, well, if you're dieting, will you then struggle to hold on to muscle mass? And if you're gaining, would you struggle to deliver the correct stimulus to be able to gain the muscle mass? And I think those are legitimate concerns. I think for someone of your level of leanness that is already very lean, muscle loss at this point is a concern. However, your rate of weight loss is so slow, you're aiming for just roughly 0.5 pound per week, that I think you're likely to be okay. Mm-hmm. For someone who has, let's say your old self when you were 250, I wouldn't hesitate to say, no, it's okay to continue with the calorie deficit, even if you were losing 1 pound a week at that point, because muscle loss is just it's not really going to happen at that point. For the mental side of things, if you are finding the calorie deficit to be a struggle, even though it is, I love that your kids are playing around upstairs, by the way, it's really, it's really making this more real. Yeah.
The quietest place I can find. So
yeah. It's all good. Everyone listening understands. So in terms of the calorie deficit, even though it is modest, if it is a mental burden right now, whether that is through the habits that you need to keep up, which I don't think is the case given that you've been doing this for a while, but let's say that, the extra shopping and the meal prep is just really hard, the thinking about counting is really tough, then you could be a bit more lax on that, while being careful not to go into an all or nothing swing. If I don't think that's the case with you, because you were already in this habit of doing things, right? So then the only question will then be, okay, where are my fatigue levels at generally? Where is my hunger at? and where's my irritability at? These are measures that we get clients to track. And if these things are as objectively as possible, obviously these are subjective things, but if these things are creeping up, then that is an argument for bumping calories back up. And let's say you were losing 0.5 pound per week. So this is technically a 250 calorie deficit that you're in. I would suggest adding in, say, 350, 400 calories, just to really make sure that you are back at maintenance, just not like your lowest point where you maintain. And I've got an article on that to anyone listening who that didn't quite make sense to. ripbody.com/finding-calorie-maintenance. Let me just check if that's finding or, calorie or caloric. Yeah, finding calorie maintenance. That is the URL for that one. So, yeah. That will make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there any other questions that you wanted to ask? I think we hit on all of the main points here, Don.
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
And how confident do you feel moving forward now, would you say? Be honest, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the discussion on how close to failure we need to go really helped. That's a piece that I was missing. I know at some point I'm going to have to consider going to an advanced program.
Yep.
I mean, I've been lifting at this point for about 2 years, and I really have no clue how to get that started with my current lifestyle, my change in job, and all of, again, like I put so much mental energy into work. I just don't know how I'll put that into forming a program. And I certainly can't afford to have the trainer telling me this is what you're going to do. Although I'd love that.
That's okay.
Yeah. But outside of that, though, just kind of keeping myself going, progressing as best I can in the intermediate program, I feel pretty good.
Good. I'll tell you what you can do. Just remember, there are no advanced training programs. There are no intermediate training programs, and there are no beginner training programs. These are just labels that we in the industry put on things to help guide people as to what is likely appropriate for them at any given point. Now, what is an advanced program to you? Well, I'd encourage you to think of just the differences in how that may be presented. So let's say that you're currently doing an upper-lower 4-day per week split. I know you mentioned the intermediate bodybuilding, but okay, in fact, we can go with the intermediate bodybuilding program because a lot of people know that. So this is going to be upper-lower, upper push, upper pull, and lower. In fact, I think it's lower, then upper body, then it's lower, and then it's upper body push, upper body pull, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So what would the difference then be? It can simply be that you have a couple more exercises on maybe one extra exercise on each of those days, which has nudged up your training volume a little. Maybe you've changed 1 or 2 other exercises out in your training program, just to give you a slightly different stimulus there. And you may have an extra set on 2 of your exercises on each of those days, your key exercises. And this is just going to then nudge training volume overall up by perhaps 10%, maybe 15%. And frankly, that could very well be enough to then keep you progressing for another year while you're in this calorie surplus. Just something as simple as that. And of course, the key is to then be mindful of these, slight aches and pains that we sometimes get, and then just being careful about adjusting our grip positions, foot positions, angles of motion so that we aren't then exacerbating that pain, so that we're lifting without any pain, and swapping out exercises when appropriate to avoid that. So I wouldn't please don't have in your mind that you need something quote unquote advanced. This, what I've just explained there, this is how we look at our clients' programs, adjust them and tweak them. And yeah, there can be like quite a lot that goes into it, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It can actually really be super simple when it comes to hypertrophy training, bodybuilding training. This isn't strength, like this isn't powerlifting, which can get quite complicated. The bodybuilding part can really be, okay, more volume, higher or lower intensity, right?
Mm-hmm.
and just keep going. And that's why you see successful bodybuilders who have done all different kinds of programs, because it can all work. The main thing is keeping on doing it with passion and energy and not getting injured over the long term. Yeah.
That's good to know. I was daunted by the idea, I forget what they're called, like mesocycles and all the different cycles that you can do. And that's the part where I felt like I just can't keep up with this.
I think the third edition of the Muscle and Strength Training Pyramid is going to be even more helpful for people in helping simplify training programming when they're doing it for themselves or for their clients, because we've really tried to work hard on that part. I know a lot of people found the second edition is like super helpful, and they've certainly sold very well, and I'm very grateful for that. But that's something that we've put a particular focus on for these upcoming third editions. I don't have a date on those yet. It is really a case of they're ready when they're ready. But I think you will find it much easier to understand and implement. So yeah.
Awesome.
Look forward to those. Yeah. Don, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, please ask in the YouTube comments or just reply to the email if you're getting this on the email. And if you're not getting this on the email, why are you not subscribed? Go to RipBody.com, enter your email address in that box. You'll get my free Kickstart course that will be delivered over 15 days, taking you through all of the nutrition and training mistakes that people make. You'll also get all of our free programs. You'll get my free nutrition guidebook. Really, it's better than what most people sell. But again, it's free. Now, if you would like to support the show, then you could leave us an honest review. That will help with discoverability. And of course, if you're interested in coaching, we would love to hear from you. Go to ripbody.com/coaching or just click the coaching button on the website. And I look forward to seeing how we can help. Until next time, thank you.